The Weekly Blend is proudly sponsored by Game Freaks, your local game store here in Northwest Washington. I'm Lasse Lund.
I'm Corey Burris.
And we're with theweeklyblend.com, and we are reviewing Gears of War 3 today.
Now, Gears of War 3 is the third, obviously, installment of the Epic's Gears of War franchise. A much loved by us. It's a fun, action, third-person, cover-based shooter.
Definitely oriented around the hardcore gamer.
Exactly. And one of the great things about this game is that they always add something new every single time they approach the series. And, you know, especially being the third installment, you would think that this would kind of get old and some of that stuff, but they really did add. They added new boss types in this campaign. They added new abilities, but they added all these different modes and really fleshed out the Gears of War franchise. And this is the final Gears of War story arc
for the characters
Marcus.
that we're familiar with. Yeah,
exactly.
So where we find Marcus and his company is they're on the world of Sarah. Jacinto is sunk, so they're on a ship actually. And they're one of the few remaining pockets of humanity. And this storyline deals with Marcus trying to find his father and dealing with the whole Lambent situation because they have definitely taken over the entire world.
Yeah, and it's an interesting take. I think that if you look at the overall storyline, it's kind of boring of what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally are going from one place to another place to find one person. But what's great about the Gears of War franchise is there are some emotional points in there. They take you to some different areas of the world that show you what has happened in the history of that world, even though they never fully explain, which is, I think, kind of one of the low points.
Well, and I think that's one of the problems that the Gears of War franchise has always faced is they had the potential for an absolutely emotional and impacting narrative, and they were never quite able to get that out in front of all the different set pieces and the kind of the excitement and the dude bro mentality behind the game.
Which I actually don't mind a little bit of the dude bro aspect because I think that is kind of characteristic of military anyway. So it's not, to me, that didn't really bother me, but I do think that they kind of falter on the overall storyline. But it was a great, I mean, the pacing in that campaign is probably one of the best pacing in games. You always feel like you're doing something different. They have 4-player co-op through the entire campaign, and it is built around that.
Absolutely, and I think it's even a better experience as a 4-player game. Just looking at how they've incorporated that into all the mission structures, and you never are without your squad of 4, and it always seemed like a natural extension. Like this is the way Gears of War should be played as an entire franchise. 4 people working together through a campaign.
Yeah. And they don't do it arbitrarily. They don't make it so that you have to hold something while somebody else does something else. They really do have it where you're always working together. Included in that is the arcade mode, which is kind of the co-opetition thing where it's who actually, there's a point system where you're competing on who can get the most points in a given campaign. And that's just that's a fun way to go back and play through it again and kind of have a little bit of a different experience and still have fun with it.
And you can rack up that score by hitting so many different enemy types, right? I mean, this is probably the most enemy types that I've ever seen in a game. Yeah. I mean, when you're not fighting the Lambent, you're fighting the Locust, and they've introduced numerous enemy types for each of those different, I guess you call them tribes or whatever, but you're always facing a new situation. You're always facing something where you have to adapt your tactics, and your enemies have different weapons and different abilities, and they manifest those new abilities right in the middle of it when you're talking about something like the Drudges. It just, you are always doing something new. Now, this is the end of the cycle for this storyline. So where the franchise goes from here is anybody's guess, but it's definitely a satisfying conclusion, I think.
Yeah, it really is. They did a great job of kind of concluding everything and making you feel like you come to a satisfying conclusion in terms of the story, but you also come to a satisfying conclusion in where they take those characters and how they build them throughout the series.
Absolutely.
Another interesting mode is the competitive mode. It's one of the most popular modes of Gears of War.
And of all games online,
that's
true. Yeah.
They really screwed up on Gears of War 2. The servers were terrible. People couldn't get online. They decided they're going to fix that by having dedicated servers. And really, man, Gears of War just sings on multiplayer. It's easy to get into a match. It's easy to find people that are competitive with you, and it's fun.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole lag aspect in the last iteration. I haven't noticed any lag in the time that I've spent online. So this server hosting really has ramped up what they've been able to do with multiplayer. They've added in a couple new match types. The maps are incredibly well built, and you know, depending on your level of skill, you may or may not have more fun in this mode as opposed to the other modes. But they've definitely also incorporated the ability to just progress and have that carrot that you're always going after with their new medal system and with ribbons and with all kinds of different things that you can do, not only in competitive multiplayer, but in some of the other modes. And one of those other modes is...
one of my favorite modes, Horde mode, and this is an extension of what they did in Gears of War 2, where they added the Horde-esque, where you're kind of holed up and you have to kind of fight wave after wave of enemies. You go up through 50 waves.
And it's been replicated in a lot of other franchises.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people took this idea and just ran with it. Well, they took it and they upped it another notch by allowing you to
I would say
level
up to 3 notches.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, they give you this ability to create fortifications around the area that you hold up. They noticed that people were holding up in one area to fight anyway, so they said, well, let's work with that. Let's let them have turrets, let's let them have mech suits, let's let them have barriers, let's let them have, you know, all these different things. And there's a leveling up element to that too. So you're always fighting, or not fighting, but you're always competing to get more money so that you can do better upgrades and upgrade all of your different abilities.
I think one of my favorite aspects of Horde mode is definitely the boss wave.
Yeah.
It just, every 10 waves, and there's 50 waves total, every 10 waves you face one of numerous different enemy types that are bosses. So everything from Brumok to a Lambent Berserker to Corpsers, Reavers. I mean, you never know what you're going to go up against. And you can always, whenever you're playing online with your buddies, you can always tell when they spotted a Lambent Berserker because everybody freaks out. So definitely an interesting angle incorporating boss fights into Horde mode.
Absolutely. And one of the coolest new additions is the other mode, which is Beast mode. And what's
flipped perspectives. You get to see what a fight is like from the eyes of the Locust.
Yeah, and what's great about it is that it takes that idea of like you're fighting waves and waves, but now you are the waves and waves. So you're not really trying to survive as long as you are trying, as much as you're trying to quickly as get
deal
there
damage.
Possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And they only cover a small segment of the total enemy types, and it'd be great to see some added to Beast mode via DLC at some point down the road. Hopefully, Epic is already thinking about that. But I mean, you get to take control of a Berserker, you get to take control of Ticker, you get to see what it's like to be a Wraith, you get to see what it's like to just be Cantus. There's lots of different experiences we had within Beast mode.
Yeah, and it's a quick, fun thing. You can jump in and play for like 20 minutes with your friends and still get through a whole round, which is a great way of doing it.
So on the whole, Gears of War 3 has really added in an incredible level of polish, an incredible level of variety. It is probably some of the most fun in a shooter that you're going to have in all of 2011.
Yeah, it's why we are giving Gears of War 3 a 5 out of 5, because frankly, it's just that good. I mean, if you don't have this game, you are missing out on hours and hours of just amazing gameplay and fun.
And it has something for everybody. I mean,
it really
you can have the single player experience, you can have the online competitive experience, and you can have the co-op experience in almost every level. So that's all we have for you today. Be sure to check out our other reviews at theweeklyblend.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/theweeklyblend or on Facebook at facebook.com/theweeklyblend. We'll check you out for our next review.